I'd like to talk about the issue of how to debate effectively, whether it be a debate on politics, religion, Bible doctrine, science, and so forth. This is not meant to be exhaustive at all, but I just wanted to share some thoughts that might be helpful to you the next time you find yourself involved in a dispute with someone. First thing I want to stress is in regard to what your goal should be when you are disputing. Now, assuming you're correct in your position and you understand your opponent's position well, one of your main goals should simply be to persuade the other person to agree with your position. The reason why I say this is because many people can succumb to the error of not making persuasion as their main goal in disputing. I've read enough in the comment sections of YouTube videos and all sorts of controversial issues that has made this pretty clear to me. Based on how people talk to each other as they dispute, it seems often their goal is not so much to persuade, but is largely to vent and unleash anger on others. Now, this is one of your goals that's going to dictate how you communicate. Namely, if your goal is to emotionally injure those who disagree with you, you are going to resort to methods which will best accomplish that goal. Namely, you will resort to not sticking to a calm, intelligent exchange of ideas, but you will resort to language that you feel will best humiliate and inflict emotional pain on others. You may have all this pent-up frustration buried deep inside of you on some controversial issue, and because you may value releasing that anger more than showing respect that is due others, you will tend to have the goal of letting that anger explode like a volcano and burn your opponents using the lava of all sorts of inflammatory communication. You may try to use your wit to create certain insults and put downs along with all sorts of colorful language to accomplish your goal of venting and inflicting emotional suffering on someone else, all because they disagree with you on an issue. I would suggest that when it comes to arguing, your goal should never be to vent anger and tear down someone else, but instead it should be on persuading the other person to hopefully see your position and also to minimize irritating them when you're doing that. And one of the best approaches when seeking to persuade another is to be gentle and respectful. Imagine you're trying to remove a splinter in the hand of a little boy using tweezers, and assume your goal is to keep him as calm as possible and to minimize discomfort as you remove the splinter. And that is truly your goal. You're likely not going to charge at the child very quickly and start chaotically probing him with the tweezers with massive force and speed somewhere remotely where the splinter is, all the while screaming at the boy to stay calm. If you take such a violent approach, you will likely startle, irritate, and frighten the boy. You may even injure him. You will fail to have accomplished your goal of successfully removing the splinter and keeping the boy as calm and comfortable as possible. You would know that to achieve your goal, you would want to move very slowly, very carefully, and very gently, along with maybe speaking some calming, affirming words to the boy. So it is when it comes to disputing with someone. If you really believe the person is in error, it's as if you believe they may have a splinter in their thinking, so to speak. And your goal should be to remove that splinter and to minimize discomfort. And to accomplish this goal, you need to take a gentle approach. The reason is because a person's beliefs and ideas are often very dear to him, and they are intimately connected to their emotions, whether it be their worldview, their political or doctrinal positions, or some other belief. People will tend to love and have strong feelings towards their beliefs. And thus, because there is this intimate connection between one's ideas and emotions, the person's ideas will be a very sensitive area. And much like you would need to be sensitive and careful when trying to remove a splinter from a boy's hand, which is sensitive to pain, so we must be very careful when dealing with a person's ideas. Because challenging a person's treasured beliefs, even respectfully, is going to tend to stir their emotions in a negative way to some degree. This is why it is essential to minimize irritating a person's emotions when you are disputing with them. The value in this is partly because people tend to be more able to think and process information better if they are not feeling negative emotions. What often happens is when you insult someone, it will tend to inflame the person's anger towards you, and they will be tempted to want to defend their character in some way. Or they may want to retaliate and start insulting you back. This may ultimately lead you to going back and forth, attacking each other, and you basically end up getting totally sidetracked from the real issue you are disputing. Imagine you want to take a drive to some destination as soon as possible, and assume it's just a straight 30-minute ride up the highway. If that's your goal, that means you should just get on the highway and stay on it and avoid any unnecessary stops or tangents. But what would happen if you got on the highway, but after a few minutes you decide to drive off the road onto some rough terrain, and you decide to do some off-roading? Now, you might find it fun to drive over some bumps and through some puddles and weeds, plants, and small trees and so forth, but doing all that is going to hinder you from achieving your goal of reaching your destination as soon as possible. See, this is precisely what happens almost every time a person uses inflammatory language in an argument. It tends to take the dispute off the main road. You may have been having a nice, pleasant exchange of ideas as you are driving together up the main road of intelligent dialogue, trying to get to the destination of coming to some kind of agreement. But as soon as someone makes the first insult, there is the serious risk of steering the dispute off the road, over the curb, through a fence, and into an area where things may tend to get very muddy and very bumpy very fast. And if you keep it up, you both may end up driving off of a cliff. In light of this, try to stay on the main road of the dispute, keeping focus on the ultimate goal, which is to persuade. Focus on your topic and refrain from personal attacks or anything that might tend to unnecessarily irritate the person you are speaking to, which may take the debate onto some annoying and destructive detour. It can really help to think before you speak. We read in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19, "When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whosoever restrains his lips is prudent." When you're in a dispute and you're a bit emotional and you just start rallying off everything that comes to your mind, there's an increased chance, when your words are many, of you saying something sinful and unnecessarily hurting the person that you're trying to convince. There is wisdom in heeding the words of James in James chapter 1, verse 19, and to be slow to speak, especially when we are involved in some kind of debate when emotions can be more easily stirred in a negative way. Before you say something that you think might inflame someone's anger, ask yourself how you would feel if someone said that to you in an argument. If you wouldn't like it, most likely others won't either. Keep in mind that any harsh language you use in a debate is not going to help you achieve your goal of convincing any intelligent person of their error. When you are tempted to insult, ask yourself this question. Do you actually think there's ever been a person in history, an intelligent person in history, that has ever been insulted into believing a certain position? Where they believed one idea, but then people told them that they were stupid or brainwashed, and that just somehow led them to change their mind over time. Do you think there's ever been a time when a person's been lying in bed and having believed the position about something for many years, and then they think to themselves, I've believed this position for many years now, but somebody on YouTube in a YouTube comment said that I was a moron for believing it, so I think I'm going to change my mind now. I don't sense that's ever happened, nor will it ever happen to any intelligent person. Derogatory language does not in any way help persuade reasonable people to see your position. And consider the fact that even if your insults are true, they are not even evidence that your position is true. If you're arguing about objective truth on a certain issue, the character or the intelligence of the person you're arguing with is typically irrelevant in determining the truth. Let's say we were arguing about some scientific issue and I've been presenting arguments from my position, and you say that I'm brainwashed or dumb. For argument's sake, let's assume I am brainwashed and dumb, more than anyone in the world. We can agree on that. That fact does not help establish your position, nor does it invalidate my position, nor invalidate any of my arguments. So since insults really don't help you achieve your goal in establishing your position, and it doesn't help you to convince your opponent, it makes no sense to use them in a dispute. It's as useless as trying to win a game of chess by knocking some of your opponent's pieces off the table. In playing chess or any game, you need to play by the rules. So when you're debating, there are rules you must abide by, namely to focus on the facts and to be respectful at all times. Now realize this can be very difficult to do when you're discussing something you are very passionate about, and especially when the person you are speaking to has been disrespectful to you in some way and has maybe gotten you very upset. It can take a lot of self-control to restrain yourself from retaliating. But remember that it is precious in the eyes of Christ to control yourself rather than to give in to retaliation. Some people, especially men, might think it is a sign of being manly and tough to retaliate in a debate with foul, mean-spirited language. But note, it is not a sign of strength at all, but of moral weakness, where they lack the self-control to subdue the sinful urges of the flesh. There's also the saying that foul language is the weak-minded man's way of expressing himself. Now, there are people who have relatively weaker minds which cannot handle an intelligent challenge to their position on something, nor do they have sufficient humility and teachableness to admit when they are wrong. And it's often these people who can tend to resort to attacking their opponent with emotionally cutting words. They find they can't manifest sharp arguments, so they succumb to manifesting a sharp tongue. Such a tongue ought never to be found in the mouth of a true believer. As James chapter 3, verse 10 says, "From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so." I realize it can cause a measure of stress to refrain from unleashing your frustration with cutting words, but remember that it is Christ-like to hold your peace, and that willingness you have to endure that stress as you restrain yourself is pleasing to Christ. It's good to keep in mind that it is a manifestation of true power and strength to control your mouth and maintain your composure in a dispute, even when you are disrespected in some way. For James teaches that those who are not at fault in their speech, he is a perfect man and able to control his entire body. And so when seeking to persuade in a dispute, seek to bridle your tongue and avoid any kind of inflammatory language. Try to think before you speak. Focus your mental energy on constructing rational, substantive arguments that may best help to establish your own position and possibly show any weaknesses or errors in the position of the one you are disputing with. Thank you, and may God bless.